Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times, dated Monday, March 17th of 2025. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Today, rain, some heavy, breezy in the morning, high of 52 expected. Tonight, rain ends this evening. It will still be overcast with a low of 40. Tomorrow, sunny, high of 46, low of 37. On Wednesday, sunny to partly cloudy with a high of 46 and a low of 38. On Thursday, cloudy with a shower expected in the afternoon, high of 48, low of 41. And on Friday, times of clouds and sun, high of 46, low of 30. So mainly, the rain is today and tonight. The sun will rise at 6:49 a.m. It'll set at 6:50 p.m. We'll have 12 hours and a minute of daylight. The moon will rise at 10:29 p.m. and set at 8 a.m. Now, moving to the front of the paper, where the news and the lottery results are kept, and we read these because, well, somebody asked for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030, and we'll consider reading it. And if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org and click on the Listen tab. We have a fully disability-compliant website, and you should be able to listen to a week's worth of our newspaper readings and catch up on anything you might have missed. We also keep a large variety of periodicals and literature there for your listening pleasure. They stay up there in perpetuity, and we keep our grocery guides there, which are changed on Fridays, so you know what's on sale at the grocery store. All of that is free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org. Now, for the latest lottery results, we go to masslottery.com because the Cape Cod Times goes to press too early to give you those, and if you ask for them, you certainly deserve the latest results. So for the numbers game of Sunday, March 16th, in the midday drawing, the results were 4035. Yesterday's midday drawing numbers game results, 4035. Last night's evening drawing of the numbers game, 8345. Again, last night's evening drawing of the numbers game for Sunday, March 16th, 8345. Mass cash for Sunday, March 16th, 10, 13, 19, 26, and 27. And Lucky for Life rounds out our lottery results for Sunday, March 16th with 4, 14, 16, 28, and 34, with 7 the bonus number. Good luck to all who play, and remember us if you win. Now, from the cover of today's Cape Cod Times, the headline reads, "Teacher, I am afraid of retribution." English educator speaks about racism during the Barnstable School Committee meeting. This is reported by Rachel Devaney. Martha Rockwell Swindler's voice shook as she stood at the podium during a recent Barnstable School Committee meeting to speak about what she considers pervasive racism that's permeated the Barnstable public school system for the last 20 years. "I'm afraid of retribution. I fear that speaking the truth today will affect my job status, regardless of my past as a dedicated employee for over 30 years, said Rockwell Swindler during the public comment session at the February 6th meeting. "This is the climate of our district." Rockwell Swindler teaches English at Barnstable High School. On January 29th, Rockwell Swindler had launched Petition to be an anti-racist school system, urging the public to sign if they're looking for accountability, equity, and justice in the district. "I stand here today to put a mirror to you because our students deserve more. I stand here today to call attention to the systemic racism and its negative effects on the entire school population," said Rockwell Swindler to the school committee. Superintendent Sarah Ahern did not immediately return the Times' request for comment for this story. Rockwell Swindler said the school committee and school leadership has done little to end racism. "You are part of the problem," she said. The petition calls for accountability in Barnstable. The petition includes a list of demands and asks school officials to support and retain staff of color, and asks the school committee to ensure that a culture of inclusion is cultivated by hiring, retaining, and supporting staff of color in leadership and teaching roles. The document also calls for accountability for what Rockwell Swindler described as the unjust firing of Associate Principal Hope Taylor. We call for a comprehensive and transparent investigation into the firing of Mrs. Taylor, a distinguished leader and the only black woman in a leadership role at Barnstable, reads the petition. Her firing after decades of service was a direct result of systemic racism that cannot be ignored. Taylor was one of 3 staff members who were accused of leaving 2 students behind after a Belle of the Ball prom dress selection event on April 6, 2024 at the John Hines Veteran Convention Center in Boston. The outing was a school-sponsored field trip on a school bus. Rockwell Swindler's petition also calls for the district to implement a robust anti-racism curriculum and provide ongoing professional development for all staff. The petition asks the district to examine unconscious bias, racism in the classroom, and the unequal treatment of students of color. Former Barnstable High School art teacher Maria Reed also told the school committee she experienced racism as a teacher, saw black children and children of color facing racism regularly. Go see what's going on. I've seen it over and over again. We need to show these children love. We need it more than anything in the world right now, said Reed. Let these kids have a chance. What are Rockwell Swindler's main concerns? During her remarks, Rockwell Swindler said she's unhappy about the number of black staff and teachers who've been fired in the last several years, including Taylor, former custodian Gerald Lopes, and former culinary arts teacher Nyanika Banda. In the past 3 years, she said staff of color have not been rehired or were involved in volatile situations out of their control and pushed into early retirement. Banda was a highly regarded and published chef who was a culinary arts teacher and was forced out by old-school white teachers and administrators, said Rockwell Swindler, and the associate principal was solely published for an event with 4 adults present, all of whom were of color. Why was Mrs. Taylor the only one fired? Rockwell Swindler also hopes the district will re-examine the elimination of college preparatory classes and the former Barnstable Red Raiders logo, which she said was approved by Wampanoag tribe elders. Barnstable was investigated for racism in 2006. During Rockwell Swindler's speech, she also mentioned the New England Equity Assistance Center at Brown University report, which was issued in June of 2006, 19 years ago. The report grew out of a request made by then Superintendent of Schools Thomas McDonald, asking for an independent assessment of the district to help meet the emotional and academic needs of all students, particularly students of color. McDonald's successor, Patricia Grenier, then made the report available to parents, staff members, and the public. We have been investigated formally and been told we were acting in a racist way, and through too many superintendents we did little about it, said Rockwell Swindler. During the investigation, according to the report, the Equity Center's team interviewed administrators, staff, teachers, parents, and students, and conducted surveys, focus groups, and classroom observations. The study, according to the report, was to develop a comprehensive plan that would include ongoing professional development, community outreach, and improvement in interschool and interdepartment coordination and student transitions. Throughout the report, investigators cited concerns such as district-wide cultural competence, including staff taking a colorblind approach to diversity, a lack of culturally inclusive curriculum, teacher perceptions of student behavior, and teacher expectations for students of color. The report said the uneasiness with acknowledging difference hurts students of color. It prevents teachers from recognizing the varied needs and resources for learning that their students have, according to the report. It also inhibits teachers from making proactive efforts to engage students of color who may be having difficulties, using culturally responsive teaching methods, and employing a culturally inclusive curriculum. It can also cause staff to draw incorrect conclusions about some social behaviors of students of color and English language learners, the report says. This uneasiness with diversity is likely to be related to the low expectations many staff appear to hold for students of color and for English language learners. Among other concerns, investigators said bullying and intergroup relations at village elementary schools was also problematic. Danielle Hill of Hyannis is a parent of children attending Barnstable High School. She also spoke during public comment during the school committee meeting and said many of the concerns that were identified by investigators in the report continue to be an issue in 2025. The reason why we're pointing this out is because our children are experiencing these microaggressions, said Hill. Representation matters when it comes to long-term outcomes academically. Our next story on the cover of today's Cape Cod Times, dated March 17th, a Monday. Man slain in Sunday shooting in Hyannis by Zane Razak. A 36-year-old Yarmouth man faces a murder charge after authorities say he shot a man on North Street in Hyannis early Sunday morning, according to the Barnstable Police Department. Barnstable police officers went to a North Street parking lot near Washington Street in Hyannis around 1 a.m., answering a call about a gunshot. The first officer on the scene saw a man who had been shot in the head and immediately began life-saving measures. Hyannis fire and rescue personnel soon arrived to treat and bring the victim, a 41-year-old Hyannis resident, to Cape Cod Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Witnesses told officers that a dark pickup truck had left the area after the shooting. A Barnstable officer found the car and its driver a short distance from the North Street parking lot, police said, and that person was taken into custody and was eventually charged with murder and booked at the Barnstable Police Station, where he's currently being held without bail. In a statement, Cape and Islands District Attorney Robert Galabois called the shooting an isolated matter and said the person taken into custody will be arraigned on Monday morning at Barnstable District Court. Mass State Police detectives also lent a hand in the investigation. Moving inside the paper, as we keep it local, Airman court-martialed for Pentagon leak by Nate Raymond of Reuters. From Boston, Jack Teixeira, a member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard serving a 15-year prison sentence for leaking classified U.S. national security documents online, on Thursday pleaded guilty to military charges of obstructing justice. Teixeira, 23 years old of Dighton, entered the plea following the commencement of court-martial proceedings earlier this week at Hansom Air Force Base in Massachusetts under a deal that calls for no additional time in custody and for him to be dishonorably discharged, according to one of his attorneys. I've acted on my moral truth as an American and a patriot. I'm willing to accept accountability, and I know I'll be living in a Bureau of Prisons facility for the next decade plus, Teixeira said in a statement to the judge as part of his plea proceedings. He pleaded guilty after military judge Colonel Vicky Marcus rejected Teixeira's bid to have the charges tossed on the grounds that they violated his right to not be prosecuted twice for the same offense, after the U.S. Department of Justice had earlier prosecuted him in civilian court. The plea was confirmed by his lawyer in the Justice Department case, Michael Bachrach. Teixeira is expected to be sentenced later on Thursday. The Air Force had no immediate comment. Teixeira spoke for about 10 minutes before the sentencing in his court-martial, asking the military court to consider his motivation when sentencing him. I was granted access to classified information. I chose to share some of that information with the public. In a brief moment of regret, I took actions that I knew would have the secondary effect of making an investigation more complicated for law enforcement, reads the statement he made during the proceeding. I understand and understood then and now that what I did was illegal, but I also believed then and still believe now that it was my moral obligation as a proud American and a patriot. Teixeira's statement went on to discuss his opposition to America's involvement in the war in Ukraine, the Biden administration, and his belief in the deep state. He also said he acted alone. He asked the military court to take into consideration his previous sentence from the federal court system. In closing, my sole self-interest request is, I ask President Donald Trump, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Ms. Alice Johnson to review my double prosecution and punishments with an eye toward reversing, he said. Johnson is Trump's pardon czar. What was Jack Teixeira charged with? The military charges were filed last year following what U.S. authorities say was one of the largest leaks of classified documents in years, including some related to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Prosecutors say that Teixeira, while serving as an airman first class at Otis Air National Guard Base on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, in January of 2022 began accessing classified information that he shared with individuals on the internet app Discord. Air Force prosecutors say Teixeira obstructed justice by then disposing of an iPad, computer hard drive, and iPhone after the leaks were uncovered in April of 2023 and instructed someone to delete online messages Teixeira had sent on the Discord messaging app. The Air Force pursued charges only after Teixeira had already pleaded guilty in March of 2024 to separate charges that were brought by the Justice Department that he willfully retained and transmitted classified information relating to national defense. Teixeira was subsequently sentenced in November by a federal judge in Boston to 15 years in prison. Teixeira, a 2020 graduate of Dighton Rehoboth Regional High School, was arrested at his Dighton home in April of 2023. Additional reporting and previous reporting of this story was done by the Taunton Daily Gazette. The next headline, jobless claims in Massachusetts increased last week. Initial filings for unemployment benefits in Massachusetts rose last week compared with the week prior, the U.S. Department of Labor said on Thursday. New jobless claims, which is a proxy for layoffs, increased to 5,403 in the week ending March 8th. That's up from 5,371 the week before, the Labor Department said. U.S. unemployment claims dropped to 220,000 last week. That's down 2,000 claims from the 222,000 the week prior on a seasonally adjusted basis. Alaska saw the largest percentage increase in weekly claims, with claims jumping by 53.8%. New Hampshire, meanwhile, saw the largest percentage drop in new claims, with claims dropping by 66.5%. And in a totally different story about a Teixeira, spelled the same way, Paul Teixeira named as Provincetown School's chief. This is from the Cape and Islands section. This is reported by Desiree McFargen. In a unanimous decision, the Provincetown School Committee's chosen veteran educator Paul Teixeira to be the next superintendent of Provincetown IB World's schools, citing his lengthy experience, commitment to the IB and English language learners programs, and the favorable impressions of staff and students. The board made its decision Friday night at the Provincetown School Library. Teixeira will begin in his role as Provincetown Superintendent on July 1st, pending negotiations with the school committee with the help of attorneys. One quality about Teixeira that was especially attractive to committee members was his tenure at the last two school districts he worked in, Malden Public Schools and Medford Public Schools. I think the fact that he spent so long in each of those districts really speaks to his desire to stay in a place and truly understand it, and really try to support that community, said committee chair Matthew Gunn. In their feedback during the superintendent search, staff members said that was one of their concerns, he said. Reached Friday night, Teixeira said he's eager to tackle the job. I'm honored and excited to serve as the next superintendent of the Provincetown IB World Schools. Provincetown is a community that has a deep commitment to academic excellence, inclusivity, and innovation, Teixeira said in an email to the Cape Cod Times. I look forward to working alongside the dedicated educators, staff, caregivers, and community partners to support every student in reaching their full potential. What are the next steps? With the July 1st start date, the school committee hopes they'll be able to sign a contract with Teixeira by the end of April. If sooner, all the better. But it just depends on how negotiations go, said Adriana Stefani, member of the school committee. Once the contract is signed, Teixeira will begin an onboarding process. There's lots of things he has to learn that you can't have access to until you become superintendent, said Stephanie. Replacing a beloved superintendent. During the meeting, committee members, several times, spoke in glowing terms about current superintendent Jerry Goyette. Gunn said Goyette is highly respected by the board, community, teachers, and staff. I feel like I really needed a candidate who was going to be able to step into those shoes, if not right away, well, then eventually, said Gunn, later stating that Teixeira was that candidate. Gunn also mentioned that Goyette might have been persuaded into staying for one more year if the committee were unable to make a decision. Committee member Therese Nelson said she believes it would be wrong to find a superintendent who would merely replace Goyette. As much as I hate to see Jerry go, I think we had 3 great candidates that were presented, Nelson continued. I think Paul's an excellent candidate to step into the next phase for Provincetown. I was intrigued. He seems to enjoy grant writing. And I think we're looking at a future where schools are going to have less and less ability to get money. And with the political environment, I think it's great that he brings that expertise to us because it'll help us pay our way forward, said Nelson. Nelson said she's confident in Teixeira since he's shown interest in Provincetown in the past. Paul had said to his colleagues that he was going to stay in Medford unless the job for superintendent in Provincetown ever opened. All 5 committee members, including members Engina Lithcott and Galen Malicote, offered many of the same reasons for picking Teixeira, highlighting his 28 years of experience, his commitment to the International Baccalaureate, the IB, program, to the school budget and funding, and also the reaction from students and staff members. From the feedback that I got, from the vibes that I got, from the communication during the forums, there was one person who I feel very strongly about, and it's stayed pretty consistent throughout the whole process, said Stefani before naming Teixeira. Teixeira doesn't have experience in IB schools, but was impressed with the program and excited to grow it, member Nelson said. Provincetown IB World Schools was the second school in Massachusetts to have an elementary international baccalaureate program. Lithcott and Malicote also highlighted Teixeira's commitment to English as a second language learners and the way that he's provided resources and assistance to students from immigrant households in other school districts. Teixeira worked at Malden Public Schools from 2002 to 2017, first as a teacher for English learners, then as curriculum specialist and instructor coach for kindergarten to grade 12, and finally as director for English language learners, ELL, and Title III. Teixeira has spent that last 8 years since 2017 at Medford Public Schools as director of ELL and Title III, according to his resume. Throughout the meeting, and after naming Teixeira as the committee's pick for superintendent, each committee member thanked the search committee and all members of the community who participated in the process. Stefani emphasized that the IB program is the foundation of the school, and students remain the most important part. When our teachers are happy, our students are happy, and when our students are happy, they learn well, said Stefani. The other story in the Cape and Islands program, portion of the paper today on St. Patrick's Day, the challenges of shooting the annual St. Patrick's Day parade in Cape Cod by Stephen Heslip, who is the photo editor of the Cape Cod Times, and we read these because they don't really talk about the photo itself. They talk more about his process, which is pretty interesting, whether or not you are able to take a picture yourself and have some sight or you don't. Legend has it that St. Patrick, the 5th century patron saint of Ireland, drove the snakes out of Ireland. His contribution to Cape Cod is as the namesake to one of its biggest events all year, the Cape Cod St. Patrick's Parade. 2025 marked its 20th anniversary, and it gets bigger every year. As the Cape Cod Times patron photojournalist of Saturday shifts, 42 years and counting, I've covered just about every one of the St. Pat parades. The original started out across the Bass River Bridge before moving west, now starting at the intersection of Route 28 and Long Pond Road in South Yarmouth. The event happens rain, shine, or snow. One year featured all 3. Marchers stepped out in the best weather ever during a COVID delayed date in September of 2021 with a temperature in the upper 70s. It was billed as St. Patrick's Day plus 6 months. Photographing a parade sounds easy. Just like the spectators, pick a spot and watch it march past. But it's more like chasing around a 3-ring circus. There are photos to be made at every turn, starting with the setup. This year's float contestants battled a gusty southwest wind, trying to tie down everything. Precious, the horse, was patiently being transformed into a unicorn, but her lighter-than-air feathered wings were a challenge for Liz Jordan with the Mills River Rescue Group, to attach. Before the 11 a.m. start time, it's a good bet to work the crowd. Always bedecked in green with many a leprechaun lurking about. Good-natured dogs arrive in all manner of costumes, which don't tend to stay on too long. 10-month-old Jade LaFawn's shamrock sunglasses caught the morning sun as she huddled in the cold near the starting line, and there is a photo of that lovely young child. Once the pipers step out and the candy starts to fly, it's best to keep inside the safety zone and move with the flow of marchers. A handful of thrown Tootsie Rolls at close range can leave a welt on exposed skin. Stay out of candy range and keep moving is the best advice for parade photography. And our final story is a local story as we complete all the local coverage that's represented in the Cape Cod Times for today, March 17th. Keating says spending bill will hurt regional health care by Frank Mulligan in Westport. Cuts to Medicaid looming in the government funding bill will badly hurt local hospitals and health centers, said U.S. Representative William Keating, Democrat from the 9th District. The bill was passed by the House by 4 votes, and it's before the Senate. And it looks like it's going to be very hard to derail that bill that's coming down, Keating said. Keating made the statements at the annual United for Aging legislative breakfast at White's of Westport on Friday, March 14th, which brought together New Bedford, Cape Cod, Plymouth, and Fall River aging services organizations with AARP Massachusetts, the Mass Aging Access, South Coast Health, the Marion Institute's South Coast Food Policy Council, and one South Coast Chamber. Healthcare will be particularly hard hit. South Coast Health, which includes Charlton Memorial Hospital in Fall River, St. Luke's Hospital in New Bedford, and Toby Hospital in Wareham, serves many people who need Medicaid services and Medicare as well, he said. Keating says people are lying about the issue. He said home health care and nursing home services will also be hurt, and people are lying about it, he said. During the House debate, people said the bill wouldn't affect Medicaid, that the word Medicaid isn't even in the bill. They think people are stupid. Just because the word Medicaid isn't in it, if the part of the budget that's being cut funds Medicaid, well then Medicaid is being cut, he said. Trump has vowed repeatedly that he won't touch Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in spending cuts. I'm not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Trump said in a recent Sunday interview on Fox News, adding, "Now we're going to get fraud out of there." Keating said the bill was very cleverly worded by a group of lawyers. Part of the language is tailored to take checks and balances power from the courts and Congress, which will streamline administration edicts without public oversight, he said. Keating said he's also deeply concerned with what's happening with Social Security and access to its information given Elon Musk and these young people he brought in to work with him. They have access to what people have for medical treatment, what their prescriptions are, what their income is, what their financial situation is. He added, imagine the value of that to drug companies and other people, even just the commercial side, let alone what else could be done with that information. Keating has co-sponsored legislation to stop this access as quickly as possible, he said, but it will be hard to pass this legislation. It's important to get it done, though. And he added, Elon Musk called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. There are some good things to report, though, Keating said. The Social Security Fairness Act is passed after many years. That addresses a decrease in benefits for public sector workers in Massachusetts. And the Inflation Reduction Act is starting to unfold, which makes prescription medications more affordable to people on Medicare primarily. It was a breakthrough, he said, adding that for every member of Congress, there are 3 lobbyists for Big Pharma. Keating made headlines earlier in the week when he clashed with another representative who had misgendered another colleague during a subcommittee hearing. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of today's Cape Cod Times, dated March 17th of 2025. A happy St. Patrick's Day to all. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.